Well, allow me to reintroduce myself. So I have the 80s, and like I said, my confirmation bias, I believe the 1980s is considered the golden era of the NBA for the simple fact that it saved the NBA from the cocaine. And it's where we saw the two most prolific franchises dominate in a decade and bring fun back to the sport, where we had the Lakers and the Celtics win 8 titles between them in a 10-year span.
A whole lot of court kissing.
That was later. And then most of the teams in the decade that did actually win that weren't a Laker or a Celtic actually went multiple times. So we have some parity within this decade, so I think it's a great conversation. Like the Sixers won a few times, or they won a few times, they won once, and they were constantly in the mix with the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. So they actually pushed through in this decade, where we talked about them last decade where they didn't. But for me, I went on an organizational level, and I picked the Houston Rockets in the 80s because they went not once but twice in a Western Conference stack with the Lakers that went to 9 finals in that decade. For the simple fact that they actually went with 2 almost completely different rosters. In 81, they snuck into the finals with damn near barely being over 500. And they had Moses Malone, Calvin Murphy.
He also likes little boys.
Yeah.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah.
It is the 80s.
Yeah, the 80s. Hey, Robert Reed was on that team, Rudy Tomjanovich, and Mike Dunleavy again. Yeah. That was the 81 team.
His jaw's still there in 81 too.
Yeah, he still had it at that
Was
point.
that year?
That was
before Kermit, right?
Oh.
No, that was after Kermit, wasn't it?
You know what? Yeah, it was. It was in his late 70s when Kermit socked up cocaine.
Hey, maybe we should rename it Reign of the Cocaine. And then you have the 86 team with Ralph Sampson. 7'4", starting at power forward.
Yes.
Twin Towers.
And then Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon at center. You had Lewis Lloyd, John Lucas. Robert Reed again, and not too many people knew this, but a young Craig Elo was also on that squad.
Oh, wow.
And they only got to the finals from a lucky-ass shot beating y'all with some bullshit.
I remember I had to go to sleep that night. He hit that shot. I woke up the next morning, asked my dad, did the Lakers win? He said no. Broke down in tears.
So that's why they lost then, because you went to bed.
I broke down in tears. I'll take that loss.
So it's your fault.
It's on me.
It's your fault.
They did lose in 5 games, though.
So that was Lance.
That was Lance.
Ambassador Lance. But Kev, you had an interesting pick because it was about running and gunning, and aside from Showtime, you picked the Denver Nuggets of the 80s, and they was putting it up.
I did, and the reason I went with them is because I figured we may overlook them. A lot of people overlook how good that team was. In my mind, they were the most consistent team, again, during that era to not win. They had 9 playoff appearances, 7 winning seasons. Look at Alex English, who was putting up buckets. He averaged 26 points per game during the entire decade. Led the league in scoring in 82 and 83.
He's probably
also
the
had,
highest
Calvin
scoring
on the
person
team.
nobody talks about. Alex English.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, him and another guy, of course, we'll mention later that I definitely think are underrated. But they were also a team that could never make the conference finals. They kept losing to the Spurs, the Suns, y'all Lakers, and, of course, the Rockets. But I just felt like they should definitely be talked about because they get overlooked a lot.
There was a lot of cold teams in the Western Conference back then, but we're going to look into the East. Ken, you had the Bucks.
I had the Bucks, and kind of carrying on with Kevin's theme, they were actually more consistent than even the Nuggets because they never missed the playoffs the entire decade. They're actually the only franchise to ever make the playoffs for 10 consecutive years. They had a 60-win team in that stretch during the 80s, and this was off of an instant rebuild. Pay attention, Cleveland. They started out.
I don't think they had their salary cap.
They started out in the 80s. They had Marcus Johnson out of UCLA, Sidney Moncrief, Bob Lanier was getting towards the end of his career, Quinn Buckner, and then they turned right around and they had one of Devin's favorite players, Mr. Terry Cummings, Mr. Ricky Pierce. From Seattle. He started out there. And then John Lucas, who you just talked about. This was a loaded, consistent, quality team, quality organization in the 80s. And, like Kevin said, one of those teams that, again, you forget about. Because when you think about the 80s, you're only thinking about 2 teams. The Celtics and Lakers. But there was a lot of good basketball.
There's a lot of great basketball. Anytime, like Kevin said, if you get a chance to watch old games. But if you watch the Hardwood Classics when they show 80s games, like when they showed Neek going off against Larry Bird. That's a great game. You got the Atlanta Hawks bench going off while Bird is putting in work in that fourth quarter. But keeping it in the East, and this is a team that I always had on my mind as a team that got overlooked and kind of went into the 90s as well. But you had the Cavs.
I had the Cavs, and in the 80s, I mean, they had Mark Price, Brad Daugherty, Ron Harper, all under the age of 25.
Yeah.
They were like OKC in 2011 and 12 when they had their three, all under 25.
Yeah.
Thing about it is they got so close when they went up against Detroit. They were actually leading the series. Mark Price gets elbowed by Rick Mahorn.
Of course.
Gives him a concussion, and all of a sudden he wasn't Mark Price anymore. They were, and like you said, they led into the 90s, and then it was Jordan's turn. So, but I mean, it was just one of those things where they were a really good team.
They were super deep.
Mike Fratello.
Yeah.
Mike Fratello, the Czar. He was getting
Czar.
it. He played a different kind of basketball. He kind of slowed it down back then. But like people forget about Brad Daugherty more so now for NASCAR. But to me, the way he played, he was the first Tim Duncan before he fucked his back up. But you had Mark Price, you had Hot Rod Williams,
Craig Elo,
Senior,
Larry Nance Senior.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yams.
Who else was on that
Polo
squad?
Yeah.
Mark, Ron Harper.
Craig Elo was on there.
Chris Dudley was even on that team.
Oh, God.
Chris Dudley.
How old is he?
Yeah, but I mean Ron Harper when he was Hollywood Harper. Before the knees. But yeah,
He was a high flyer.
Yeah.
And Omar, you agree with me? You had the Rockets. It's just consistency. Do you have anything else to add?
Nope. We covered it.
All right.